my view on regrets has changed so much over time. It's really, really interesting because a few years ago, when I was younger, I used to think about regrets in what I call the level one of regrets, which is no regrets. I was fully convinced when I was young that there was a way that I could live a life that has zero regrets. Like I can get to the end of my life with no regrets. I just have to play it smart and be intentional but you know, again, naivety. As you're young, you're more naive and it's interesting because I have changed so much and I love reflecting back on those moments. I love reflecting back on how I used to think versus how I think now. And this is a great example. So level one was no regrets. I truly believe that you could live a life where you could have zero regrets, where you could get to the end of your life and look back and have no regrets. Then a few years later, I'm in my early 20s now, the mindset was that there are two types of regrets. So I realized, hold up, there's no such thing as living a life with no regrets. But I found that there are two types of regrets, and this is level two. So the two types are you either regret the things that you did or you regret the things that you didn't. So very simple. You can regret things that you did or regret things that you didn't do. And that put it into perspective for me. That was like, okay, well now I am accepting that you will have regrets. I am accepting that regrets are going to exist regardless. But what I am doing is I'm classifying them into regrets of things that I did and regrets of things that I didn't do. And I realized early on that I would prefer to regret the things that I did as opposed to regretting the things that I didn't do. Why? Because I would rather do something and regret it later, potentially, than to not do it and then never know. And then always live in that limbo of what if? What if? What if I had done this? What if I had done that? I think about this podcast. I always think about how if I just never decided to go video, would I have later on down the line thought, what if I had gone video? What would have happened? What could have happened? And so I don't like the what if mentality, and it drains me a lot just thinking about it. So I realized, okay, regrets are in two types. Regret the things that you did or regret the things that you didn't do. But if I had to pick, I'd rather regret the things that I did because I don't want to live in a mindset or in a state of what if for the rest of my life. And now, I'm approaching my mid-20s now, and I've changed my view on regrets again. And now I look at it and I think regret is a choice. That's level 3. Regret is a choice. There is no such thing as a life without regrets. And there are two types of regrets, but regardless, you're still choosing. You choose your regrets. And I think we don't often think about how you're choosing something every time. When you decide to do something, you're choosing not to do something else. And when you're deciding not to do something else, you're choosing to do something else. An example, a very clear example. I could choose to, on a Friday night, go to the gym. So I'm choosing to go to the gym, but at the same time, I'm also choosing not to go to the club. Now, the flip side is also true. I could choose on a Friday night to go to the club. I am choosing to go to the club, but I am also choosing not to go to the gym. Everything has an opportunity cost. Every action has an equal opposite force of reaction. You're always making a choice. You just don't realize it. You're either actively making a choice or you're passively making a choice. You're either consciously making a choice or you're subconsciously making a choice. You're either intentionally making a choice or you're unintentionally making a choice. But the one thing that remains true across the board is that you're always making a choice. Always. And you might not even realize it. Now, you might argue, okay, so if regrets are a choice, and I can choose my regrets. In your example of the gym and the club, I don't think that I would regret going to the club over not going to the gym. And that's fine because, again, regrets, we almost think of every regret as if it's supposed to be a deathbed regret. I think it's not as clear as that. I think you have the in the moment regrets and you have your deathbed regrets. Now, I could choose to go to the gym on Friday night, which means I am not choosing to go to the club on a Friday night. It might be a big event that all my friends are going to and I've decided not to go, right? My in the moment regret later on that week could be, everyone's talking about how fun it was, how cool it was, everyone was there. Maybe it would have been nice if I'd gone. That might be my in the moment regret. But it's not going to be my deathbed regret. On my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking about that. So, and you could classify it as in the moment and deathbed regrets or active and passive regrets. However you decide to classify them is up to you, but you kind of get the point. So it could be an in the moment regret and not be a deathbed regret. And the vice versa is also true. So again, you're always making a choice. When you choose to go to the gym, you're choosing not to stay in bed. When you're choosing to stay in bed, you might choose to not go to the gym. When you're choosing to have healthy food, you might choose not to have healthy food, vice versa. So everything is a choice. You can choose regrets. But then the question becomes, what regrets can you live with? I can live with the fact that I chose to go gym on a Friday night instead of going to the club. I can live with that. But maybe I couldn't live with the fact that I never tried to go video with a podcast. Maybe that would eat me alive for the years to come. So the question becomes, what regrets can you live with? That's the question that you need to answer. And if you can answer that question, then you'll always be making a choice that is intentional and that plays to your life and your desires. So that's how I look at it. There's 3 levels to regrets. And ultimately, as I've evolved, I've found that regret is a choice and that you can choose your regrets and that it's okay that you're going to have regrets because you cannot, every decision will not be perfect and you'll have things that you will learn across your life that, my mindset is different today than it was back then. Would I have chosen, this is a really interesting thought, I've not thought about this before actually, this is brand new. Would I have chosen the same exact things that I chose 10 years ago with the current mindset I have today? I don't think I would. I think I would have made vastly different choices. And that's okay. This isn't guilt, it's just growth. That's okay. So when you think about it, you can only do the best that you can with what you have at the time. Regret is a choice. And as we talk about regrets, Bronnie Ware wrote this book, which was about the 5 biggest regrets of the dying. So she got to interview people who were on their deathbed. And she got to speak to them and have conversations with them. And she got to really understand what is it that they regret the most. And so she compiled the 5 most common and biggest regrets that she heard from all of those conversations. And she compiled that and she wrote a book about it. And I thought it'd be cool for me to go over them and kind of give you my thoughts and my interpretation on each and every single one of them. And hopefully this might shed some clarity in your life as well as you hear what I'm about to say. So the number 1 regret, or the first one to begin with, I don't think this is any particular order actually, so let me just rephrase that. It's not in no particular order, these are the 5 regrets. So the first one that I'm going to speak about is, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. That was one of the most common regrets that people expressed. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Now, I'm in my mid-20s and even I can almost like resonate with this because as I look back when I was young and school, college, high school, university, sports, whatever, I always had a vast circle of friends. And as you progress to life, I'm sure you can relate to this, as you progress to life, your circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And not just that, everyone gets busier and busier and busier. And what tends to happen, or at least upon reflection, what I've found that has happened to me is that it becomes difficult to keep in touch with your friends. And it's not like I'm doing it on purpose or they're doing it on purpose. Everyone's just busy. Everyone's busy trying to make it. Everyone's busy trying to look after their families. Everyone's busy catering to their life problems. Everyone's just busy. And so it becomes harder to maintain friendships. And it becomes harder to deepen those connections with those friends. I always find it interesting because a lot of people will say that if you real close friend, it doesn't matter how often you keep in touch with each other. When you see each other, it will almost be like as if it was never gone, right? You almost feel like it's almost as if we're picking up where we left off. And I don't disagree with that statement, but there's something I do disagree about it, because we're talking about low maintenance friends, which are the friends that you don't have to talk to every day. You can talk to every couple weeks, every couple months, and nothing's changed in the friendship, right? That's what they say. Like, it's almost as if nothing ever changed. But I don't know if I subscribe to that idea, because what you're talking about is maintaining friendships. So yes, correct, you might be able to maintain a friendship like that, but you are not deepening the friendship. You are not deepening the connection. So you can maintain a friendship, but you're definitely not deepening that friendship. And you're not, because it requires time and energy. You won't be closer to someone if you haven't spoken to them in 6 months. You might say that nothing's changed in terms of the connection level, but it's definitely not gone up. It might have not gone down, but it's definitely not gone up. And so as I reflect on my own personal life, I definitely can do better when it comes to friendships. I definitely can do better when it comes to maintaining friendships, but also deepening friendships, because, and there's a study out there about how the connections that you have, the number of close connections that you have, is directly correlated to your health and longevity. And I thought that was fascinating. I haven't read the study, but I'd be really intrigued to look into it to understand why. But there is some science around the number of close connections that you have correlating directly to the health and longevity of your life. And I think that I'm going to have a look at that, and maybe I might speak about it in the next episode, because I'll be intrigued to see what science is behind that. But assuming that there's objective data for this and evidence for this, then the regret of I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends speaks to how you lose touch with friends as you move through the different stages of your life. Because you decide that friends are not a big of a priority in your life as you grow older, in competition or in comparison to other things that you have. And again, also something to do with friends that is really interesting. Not everyone is your friend. Just because you know a lot of people and a lot of people know you doesn't mean that everyone is your friend. I think we use the word friend very loosely, whereas in reality, a friend should be someone that you value, who you consider to be close to you and have a connection with. An acquaintance is not a friend, but sometimes we mix that. That's something to think about. Number 2 is, I wish I had let myself be happier. I wish I had let myself be happier. This is one of the most common regrets of the dying. I wish I had let myself be happier. We live our lives expecting happiness instead of embracing happiness. We live our lives waiting for happiness instead of expressing happiness. And we live our lives hoping for happiness instead of choosing happiness. See, the one thing that remains interesting across life is that we make happiness conditional when happiness is actually unconditional. We say things like, I will be happy if, I will be happy when. I'll be happy when I get that car, when I get that promotion, when I get that job. I'll be happy if I get that car, if I get that promotion, if I get that job. It's all riddled with ifs and whens, but happiness by default is unconditional. Happiness is not a conditional. But yet we decide that we have to put these criteria that will allow us to be happy. And we keep postponing happiness into the future. You'll notice that's a pattern that we do. We postpone happiness into the future. Why is it that happiness can't be today? Why couldn't happiness be today? Why can't you choose happiness today? You can. You just believe that you can. You've been conditioned to think that you can't, but you can. And you have to get out of this mindset of the expectations that you put on yourself. You can be happy today and still aim for the same things. You could be happy and grateful today and still have ambition and drive. Some people say that you can't have both. I think you can. You can be happy and still have ambition. You can be grateful and still have desire and drive. You can. Two ideas that contradict each other can coexist. For example, I can be sad that the pandemic happened and a lot of people were affected, whilst at the same time being happy that because of that period of time, companies decided to shift to remote working, which made my life easier because that meant that I could work from home. See, those are two contradicting feelings around the same situation because two contradicting ideas can coexist in the same space. So you can be happy and sad at the same time for the same situation. You can be grateful and still have ambition around the same goal. So think about this regret of, I wish I had let myself be happier. Are you trying to live based off conditions or are you living based off the moment? Ask yourself, because I do feel like I've fallen into this pattern as well. Very early on in my life, I definitely fell into that pattern of I'll be happy when I'm at this point in my career or when the interesting thing about all of this is when I hit those career milestones that I always talked about, how when I hit that career milestone, I will be happy. I wasn't any happier. I wasn't any happier when I hit those milestones that I said once upon a time would make me happier. And then when I got there, I said, oh no, I'll be happy when and I kept postponing it. And we end up in this cycle of postponing happiness to the next day, to the next week, to the next month, to the next year, and to the next milestone. And then when it comes, we keep showing the lack of gratefulness. And there's also studies around how gratitude is directly linked to happiness. And I think the more gratitude you express, the more presence you're able to experience, the more presence that you're able to experience, the more happy you feel. And don't mistake happiness for this permanent state of being happy. A lot of people think that happiness is being happy all the time and not having problems. I don't think that's it. It's probably more like being content with everything you have and still navigating life the way that you should. You're always going to have problems. You're always going to have something that you have to worry about. You're always going to have a degree of stress. The only way that you could live a life where you have zero stress or you don't have to worry about anything is if you didn't leave the house, if you didn't do anything new, if you didn't try anything new, if you constantly were in your comfort zone, if you just stayed put in the same situation, the same conditions, that's the only way you could probably feel some sort of lack of stress. But that's not a reality, or that's not a realistic way of living. Number 3 is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Now, what does that mean? I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I don't think they mean it in the way of, oh, you shouldn't work hard and you should be lazy at work. I don't think that's what it means. I think what it means is, don't let work consume your life. Don't live to work, work to live. I think my interpretation is that's what they meant. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. These are people who probably missed out on big moments for their family, who probably missed out on spending more time with their loved ones, over career goals, over business goals. And you realize that, and especially the people who hit certain milestones in life, there's people out there that are so wealthy, but they would trade their wealth just to have more time back with their loved ones. It's so crazy. The thing that they worked for, the thing that they sacrificed the most for, is exactly the same thing that they would trade back for that sacrifice back. They would trade back all that wealth and all those achievements just to have more time with their loved ones. So if that doesn't tell you that spending time with your loved ones is important, I don't know what will. And think about it. The things that you're trying to pursue, at what cost? What is the cost? Because everything comes at the cost. There's always a cost and a price that we have to pay for everything. Is the price that you're willing to pay for that worth it in the end? Or do you think it's worth it in the end? Try and put yourself in that position. Is it worth achieving it and then not having time? Which one is it? So I wouldn't say don't work hard, but I would say be mindful. Be mindful of how much work is consuming your life, because it shouldn't come at the cost of other things that you value a lot. And look, I work hard a lot. One of the things that I consider a problem in my life is that I struggle to switch off. I struggle to slow down. To a degree, I'm a workaholic. If I'm not working in my 9-to-5 job, I'm working on my life coaching business. If I'm not working on my life coaching business, I'm working on this podcast. If I'm not working on the podcast, I'm working on my content creation online on social media. If I'm not working on that, I'm working on the newsletter. I'm working on something every single time. Like when I have free time, it's not free time. I have things to do. And that's something that I'm working through myself. How do I switch off more? How do I slow down more? So I'm working through that as well. Working hard is all good and fine until you start sacrificing things that you value more than the things you're actually pursuing. Something to think about. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. This is interesting because how many of us have suppressed our feelings because we wanted to keep the peace with others? We suppress our feelings instead of expressing our feelings. And then there's things that were left unsaid. There's things that were left to share. There's things that we kept inside because we thought if we shared A, B, and C would have... It doesn't, in the end, at the end of the day, what matters is did you feel like you expressed everything that was on your mind or in your heart? And we could extrapolate this to so many things, but I feel like it's interesting because we either suppress feelings or express them. We're never in the middle. There's no in between. There's no in the middle. You're either expressing feelings or suppressing feelings. And I would argue that we suppress feelings more often than we express them. And so it's interesting because the regret here is I wish I had had the courage to express my feelings, to be less fearful around expressing my feelings. Super, super interesting. Like, why do we suppress our feelings instead of expressing it? Something to really meditate on. And last but not least, and this one is really the one that it hits me the hardest. I think most people resonate the most with this one, which is I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Let me say that one more time. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life that is true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. The most common regret of all, why is this one the one that everyone resonates the most with? Is it because maybe we spend our lives living a life that is not the life we desire? It's not the life that we want. It's not the life that we value. It's not the life that we care for. And yet, it's still the life that we choose to live. Why is that? This is such an interesting dichotomy. Why is it that the life that we don't even want to begin with is the life that we spend the most time building? We still live that life. Why? And I think there's expectations attached to it. You could talk about family expectations, cultural expectations. You could talk about societal expectations, social media expectations. Note, what is the common pattern here? All of these expectations, what is the common pattern? The common pattern is it's all expectations that are brought externally. None of these expectations come from internal. It's all external expectations. It's casted upon us as we're growing up. And these expectations, they create a couple of problems. Number one is there's this roadmap, blueprint, whatever you want to call it, of how life should be going, of how life should look like. It's probably the biggest societal expectation of all is how life should be going, how life should look like, feel like, what you should, there's a checklist. For some reason, societally, there's a checklist to life. These are the things that you have to achieve throughout your life. Go to university, get a job, grow in your career path, then find a partner, have a family, have kids, get married, get engaged, like all of these things. You have such a repetitive checklist. You have such a generalized checklist for life that society has created. Don't know who created it, don't know who said that this is the checklist, but it seems to be the checklist. How is it that we're such unique, specific individuals, and yet there's some sort of generalized checklist for specific human beings that we are? This checklist is based off nothing. And to make it worse, now you don't just have a checklist, you have a timeline. You have to achieve certain things and certain milestones and certain goals by certain ages. I know so many people that are feeling the pressures of their age when they shouldn't. I know so many people who are 25 who think they should have been a millionaire by now, without realizing that, yes, there might be exceptions. There might be people who have achieved that. But an exception does not disprove the rule. And this pressure that we put on ourselves because of our age, it almost ruins our ability to live a life that is truly fulfilling to us, right? Because who made this checklist? Who made this timeline? Because I don't understand why we have to achieve those things. First of all, if you don't want some of those things on that checklist, you shouldn't feel like you have to pursue them. And second of all, you definitely don't have a timeline for them. It should be on your time. It should be in your own space, at your own pace. That's how you should live life. Not because family said it, not because society said it, not because social media said it, not because culture said it. None of that. You should do things because you said so. Because you said so. Not because your friends are doing it and they said so. No, because you said so. So I'd ask you to examine your beliefs. Examine the beliefs that you have and understand whether or not, one, are those even your beliefs to begin with? And two, are those limiting beliefs? And I can give you a really clear-cut example. A very clear-cut example for me in this context is, I still remember this so vividly. As I was growing up, I remember thinking that I will be, right, this is fact, that I will be in the same job for the rest of my life. That was like a limiting belief I had around what career paths and jobs really meant. Because I remember growing up around the time where everyone was emphasizing, okay, do your education, get your education right, go to university, finish university, then get a job, and then stay in that job for the rest of your life. And then retire with a pension. I remember this being so clear-cut, and I remember that being the belief I had. At one point in my life, I genuinely believed that I was going to go to university, finish that, get a job, and then that first job that I got, I would stay in it for the rest of my life. That was a limiting belief. Now, thankfully, as I was doing university, I kind of realized, hold up, I don't really want to be in a job for 45 years. And I realized that early enough that I could make a change. So when I graduated from university and I started working, I made sure that I rotated companies and that I kept applying for jobs every 1 to 2 years to keep me growing, to keep me developing. And thankfully today I've been to 4 or 5 companies in the last 5 to 6 years. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the different industries. I've learned a lot about different types of people, different teams, different companies and structures. And I've learned so much across the past 6 years in my career that I am so thankful that I broke that belief down. I'm so grateful that I didn't think, okay, let me just stay in the same job for the rest of my life. I'm so grateful that I had the courage to break that belief and say, you know what, I'm going to do this job, be at this company, and then in 1 or 2 years' time, I will swap and change companies, apply for a different job, apply for a different company, and rotate. I've broken down that belief, but it took me realizing, examining that belief when I was in uni to realize that, one, this isn't even my belief to begin with. This isn't my belief, but it was for some reason at one point something I held as a belief. Why? Because everyone around me growing up was talking about the same thing. They were talking, the neighbors, people at school, the teachers, like everyone was talking about the same thing. You go to university, you find a good job that is stable, safe, and secure. Those were the words. Stable, safe, and secure job. And then you stay for it. Like, to the rest of your life, you will stay in it until you get to retire and get to have a pension. And then you get to live life. You only live life when you finish, when you're at the end of your life. You don't live life before that. That was the belief in it. So I'm kind of glad that I broke that limitation that I put on myself. And it really, truly is a limitation, because everything that you think or that you say is making you be boxed in. Now, how big or small the box is depends on how big or small your thoughts are. Are you boxing yourself in? Are you confining your paths? Are you confining your goals? Are you confining your achievements? Are you confining your capabilities, your potential, your abilities? What is it that you're saying to yourself? Examine every single belief and ask yourself, is this my belief, or is this a family belief? Is this a societal belief? Is it a social media belief? Where does this belief come from? Do I truly want this? Do I even want this to begin with? And I think you'll find that a lot of the things that you believe in, they're not even your beliefs to begin with. They're not even your beliefs to begin with. They're just beliefs of someone else that you just held on for too long because you never sat down and questioned it. It's so crazy to me. You never sat down and questioned it. And therefore you stuck with this belief until you realize that that's not something you want. So I hope today's episode, you've had a chance to really reflect on the regrets that I've expressed today, that according to the book are the biggest regrets of the dying. And I hope it gives you clarity to reflect on your life. Is your life going down a path that is going to lead you with similar regrets to these ones? Like I said before, I don't think at this stage of my life, as I see it, there's no way you'll end up your life with zero regrets. But you can choose which regrets you want to live with. So I'd encourage you to make a choice and to every day make an active choice as to what regrets you can live with and which regrets you can't. So we've reached that point in the episode where we go into the Just a Moment segment. Just a moment means that we take a moment to look at a question and answer it from the conversation cards from The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. Now, I'll take a card out and I'll read the question, and whatever question is in there, I have to answer, and then I'll ask you the same question back so that you can share with me in the comment section. Right, let's see what question we have for today's episode. As usual, you get to see it first. All right, here we go. All right, you're seeing this first. Let's see what we have. So this question was asked by Peter Crouch, and it was answered by Davina McCall. And the question is, this is very coincidental actually. What makes you most angry about society? I think I've already answered this question as we were doing this episode. What makes me most angry about society is this idea that we have a checklist and that we have a timeline. Like, who made this checklist of things that we're supposed to achieve? And who made this timeline of things that we're supposed to achieve by when? I don't understand. I don't understand why we are... And it almost removes the room for growth. Some people don't want the things that are on that checklist. And some people do. Some people don't want to do those things by that timeline. And some people do. And I'm not saying that the people who do want those things in the checklist and that do want to do those things according to that timeline, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Actually, that's beautiful. If you want those things and you want to do them by that timeline, that is perfect. That is amazing for you. But just because it's amazing for you doesn't mean it's amazing for everyone else. And in fact, it doesn't mean that it's amazing for everyone. So you have to ask yourself, and that really angers me about society, is like always on about this checklist, always on about that timeline. And then that creates pressure. I know people in their 20s who feel like they are a complete failure. And these are people who have achieved a lot. These are people who have done so much and that have accomplished so much, but they are blinded by the pressures of society. And they're blinded by the things that other people say they should be doing. It's always about should. I think we shouldn't even use the word should. Should shouldn't even be a word that we use. It either is or isn't. So yeah, that's something that really angers me about society the most. It's the checklist and the timeline that someone decided that everyone needs to follow? And my answer to that is don't. If it fits your needs and what your desires are, do it. If it doesn't, don't. And don't feel guilty about it, because at the end of the day, you're choosing what's best for you. And I think that's what it's about. Choose what's best for you. If this is what's best for you, fantastic. If it's not, choose something else. You only get to live this life once, so you got to make the most of it. Right, so you tell me in the comments what makes you most angry about society. I'd love to know. Share it in the comments. Let me know what you think, and I'll be replying to everyone. Now, before we end the episode, I just want to say that if you've enjoyed today's episode, if you've liked the episode, and if you've learned something from today's episode, if you've taken some value from it, then please, please, please hit the subscribe button. It takes only a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the podcast, and it allows us to do better and bigger every single time. Thank you.